You know, this is the year of the 100th Grey Cup, but the first Grey Cup was actually played 103 years ago. There were no Grey Cups played in 1916 through 1918. And then in 1919, there was no Grey Cup because there was some kind of conflict over rules between the East and the West, believe it or not. But there's been one ever since, and this week's Grey Cup train feature centers around a loyal Ottawa fan who has a special link to that very first championship game played back in 1909. Our narrator this week, three-time champion Russ Jackson.
Grey Cup Stories, brought to you by Rona.
Transcribing the diaries has, for me, reignited two passions, genealogy, and the other is the CFL. And they've merged in a way that I just blown away by.
Don Tulloch has spent much of his professional life working in the back rooms of Parliament Hill. For the last 5 years, Don has worked as an Ontario MP's legislative assistant. But away from the daily pressures of the political arena, Don is addicted to another game, Canadian football.
There it is.
A native of Toronto, Don has been an Argos season ticket holder for over 13 years. He drives home on weekends to watch every Argo home game and has also become a regular at the Grey Cup.
I've been to 9 Grey Cups in total. I love the CFL because it's truly a Canadian game. And the fans across the country that are die-hard CFL fans are the best fans in the world.
While Don could share his love for the CFL with total strangers, his own family was a different story.
None of my brothers and sisters are really spectator fans of any sports. They'll come with me to the odd Argo game to humor me type of thing.
If we want Donnie to come to Toronto, the only thing he'll be coming for is most likely an Argo game. He loves it. And now at family gatherings, he talks a lot about the Argos, so we don't go to a lot of family gatherings, no.
None of our kids were interested in sports, and Don comes along and he loves the football. So I said to him one day, Don, how did you get in the family?
In fact, curiosity about family history happens to be one of Don's other pastimes. It began a few years ago when he came across these diaries. They belonged to his grandmother, Mary Elizabeth Trent, whom he'd never met. She started writing them in 1906 when she was 18 years old.
November 27, 1909. Did the shopping in the morning. Then we went downtown for tea. Had a splendid time.
My grandmother was born in 1888, and unfortunately she died before I was born. So I never knew her, and I never really had a connection with her until I started reading her diaries. A lot of the entries were rather mundane, but there's some real nuggets that tie her into the history of the time.
Went to a memorial service for victims of the Titanic. What a dreadful event.
Fascinated, Don spent countless hours after work and on weekends, when he wasn't at Argo's games, transcribing his grandmother's words. Then one evening, about a year ago, he made a discovery that connected him to the grandmother he never knew, in a way he never expected.
When I was going through the diaries, I came across one entry that said, I went to a ball game, and she said the Argonauts won. And that was the first time I realized she had been to an Argonaut game. I loved the Argos. She had been to an Argo game. I fell in love with my grandmother.
I didn't know she'd been to games. As a matter of fact, I've learned a lot about her since Don's been reading her diaries.
Reading his grandmother's frequent mentions of football, Don started asking himself, what if? So he picked up her diary from December 1909.
I thought, I wonder if by any chance she went to the first Grey Cup. So I went to the day.
Saturday, December 4th, 1909. Went to Varsity and Parkdale game with Douglas. Varsity won.
And sure enough, she had been to the game. And that truly did bring a tear to my eye.
103 years ago, 21-year-old Mary Elizabeth Trent attended a football game at Rosedale Field in Toronto, a game that her future grandson and the nation would make an annual tradition.
One thing I realized going back is that it was a real social event, and it was a way for a guy and girl to go on a date. She went to the first 3 Grey Cups, as it turns out. She went with a different fellow every year. Now, none of them were my grandfather. I think when she met my grandfather, that was it. The Grey Cup stopped.
Today, this quiet field in Toronto has become an historical landmark for CFL fans. And for Don, a reminder that there was, after all, someone in his family who shared his love of the game.
As I've gotten older, one of the funnest times I have is at Grey Cups. None of my siblings, none of my parents had really knew what that was like. And then when I came across the entry in her diary that showed that she had been at the very first Grey Cup, I felt a connection with her like I'd never had before, and a real excitement of we had a shared passion.
My mother was a lovely lady. I wish that they had known one another.
That's given me a sense of belonging maybe that I never had in my family, of where did I get this passion from? And it's been, in a strange way, a bonding experience with a grandmother that I never knew.